Good evening and welcome to the Comprehensive Plan Committee meeting. Today is March 6, 2024. I would like to just make a note that we do have a quorum present. The first order of business is our minutes, so I'd be looking for a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor? Thank you. Those are approved. With the committee's permission, I'd like to take things just slightly out of order. Instead of public comment first, I would like to do have our guest speaker, which is Tom Bartel, come up to the podium. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
All right, excellent. So Tom Bartel, please join us. He is the Economic Director in Wyndham, and he also serves as the Executive Director of the Wyndham Economic Development Corporation. And Tom, I think you've been with Wyndham for 15, 16 years now?
Yeah, I've been around Wyndham for 30 years.
Okay, but in that position?
In the current position, about 15 years, yes.
And I'd like to thank him for joining us today.
Okay.
Floor is yours.
Oh, well, thank you. It's kind of open. I'd gladly take any questions or however you want this to go. So I have been Economic Development Director for the town of Wyndham about 15 years. Prior to that, I was a Wyndham Town Councilor for 12 years. So there was, some lag in between those two. But so one of the things I brought was an extensive knowledge of Wyndham and where we were and where we wanted to go, or at least we thought we wanted to go at that time. So that's kind of my background in economic development. Since then, obviously, I've been to a number of training sessions and talked to a whole lot of people. And we've done a lot of studies, and we've done work around everything from economic development strategic plans to the broadband planning that we had done a number of years ago that included Raymond, that included Standish and Gray, and we looked at the Lakes Region broadband issues, and I know you've been doing that recently as well here, and taking advantage of opportunities that now exist that didn't exist a number of years ago when we brought the original plan in. And in many ways, it's good that you guys you and other communities in the Sligo Lakes region are kind of separating from Wyndham, because Wyndham, in many ways, was built already when it came to broadband, so we weren't eligible for a number of these the same dollars that you folks are able to get. So in many ways, regional is one thing and regional economy is one thing, but being able to separate out and do things individually by communities also works well. I was asked to just say about what my role is and the roles of the different entities that we have. So when I first started 15 years ago, I was hired as the Economic Development Director for the town of Wyndham, and I acted as the Executive Director of the Wyndham Economic Development Corporation. Okay, so there's a distinction there, but it ended up that we were doing the same. The work is pretty much the same. It's who drives that work is a little different. So at the beginning of my tenure, the board and the council, town council, went through a study and developed a strategic plan, an economic development strategic plan. And one of those things said they wanted more separation from the town for the corporation, and but at the same time, they wanted the council and town wanted to be sure they knew what the corporation was doing, and the corporation wanted to know what directions the town was taking. So we revamped everything. That the board got bigger. The council appoints essentially 9 members of a 14-member board, and then the board members appoint 5 others of the corporation. At that point, I shifted my duties to be the the Executive Director of the Economic Development Corporation, acting as the Economic Development Director for the town of Wyndham. You can see the difference, to see the different societies. So I worked for the corporation, payments, and the town transferred funds from the TIF accounts to the corporation, and that would pay my salary. It would also pay for the work that we did and the studies and the travel and everything else that we did in order to bring people in. So that happened for quite a while. This past year, we just changed that back again. So now I am the Economic Development Director for the Town of Windham, acting as the Executive Director of the corporation. That had to do with a couple of things. One was financing, and the second was that current management wanted me to report more directly to them and be more, and they had plenty for me to do, in other words, in management. So that's where, so I've gone full circle and we've gone back. The corporation still receives some funding, but not as much because it doesn't need to pay my salary and other things. So that was adjusted. And so, and what they did in the budget, I'm not going to try to figure that out. It was just how they wanted to do things. So in that case, my role has shifted somewhat in that I now report to the town manager's office and not the Economic Development Corporation Board. And so that goes back and forth a little bit. The corporation role is really providing funding through its own resources to do certain things, such as our new economic development strategic plan that's really just off the press. However, this study is being worked on so that we can adopt it to the towns, to make it the town's economic development plan. This study was a year or so in the making. We spent about $40,000 on this for the consultants to come in, take a look at it. It'll be available for everybody to see. I like the approach it took. Some of my board members and some of the counselors weren't quite sure about the final outcome of some of the recommendations. So we're working to modify and do some things that make sense for us. But this is something that we do as a corporation. The other thing we do as a corporation is we've been working on some of the, when developments come in, if people have questions or they need to work through some issues at the planning board or code office, they come to the corporation, and we have a representative, either myself or somebody else, who deals with not so much the planning board, but the planning staff and the code enforcement staff to try to not change things, but smooth things and try to make sure communication is correct on all of these things. So that's kind of a role that we have in economic development. And so that's a big role. Another role we play is getting out and marketing Windham. And so we get a lot of questions about, well, what does the Economic Development Corporation do? We never seem to see you. Well, every ad that goes out or every piece of literature goes out on a regional, in a marketing sense in New England or even nationally. Sometimes we're able to hit a few conferences. All that's done by the Economic Development Corporation, but the Economic Development Corporation's role is not to advertise itself. The role is to advertise the town. It's to market the town. It's to show people what the town has and has for opportunities for them to come in and bring in development, bring in jobs, bring their business, open up a new business, all of those things. And speaking of open up new businesses, definitely a role is having communication with startups and entrepreneurs and those sorts who try to help them through the process. We all know starting a business is very difficult to do. Transitioning a business from your garage or your kitchen to the next step or the next place is difficult. There aren't many places where you can go with that next step, and those are things that we're working on, and we're working on through this plan as well to continue that process. So that's that's that. The role on the town side and economic development is more in the planning. I work very much with the town staff on the sewer system that's going in place, the transportation program, the federal money that came in for the RAISE grant that we're going to talk about fixing Route 302, if we ever can fix Route 302, and adding lateral access roads, local access roads on the sides of Route 302 so that we can do those things. So I'm very much involved in all of that. We're weekly meetings on all of those things, and in the planning stage and hopefully starting the construction phase of the sewer project, hopefully this, in a couple of months, the major construction in a couple of months. So that's a big part of what I do. The other thing I do is I work, having done it long enough, you become the expert, even though I may not be expert in it, but the tax increment financing program in the town of Windham, they're generally known as TIFs, but tax increment financing program allows towns to collect funds, tax funds, from development for specific purposes within economic development. So, and infrastructure work supporting economic development. So, I don't know if everybody knows what tax increment financing is, so I don't have to go through that. But it's, so we've been very successful. It's taken a while, and a couple of our TIFs, one TIF has already expired, and another one has got 6 years left on it. So we started quite a while ago, but recently we've been working more and more on it, and we've been getting more and more development so that we can start accumulating funds on an annual basis to pay for the sewer project, to pay for our match with those transportation program that we have coming in. So those are things that we're using the TIF monies for, which in itself will attract those projects will attract additional development, which is what we want and where we want it. One thing the town has found, and I think you probably in Raymond have felt the same pressures, housing development in the rural areas and areas where, you maybe not want it. In case of Windham, a lot of farm land that is being subdivided and things. So there was pressure on the town to stop that, right, from people. And so the council put in some restrictions on, growth ordinance in the rural areas and allowed for more development in the more urban areas, but it's, the downtown area, downtownish areas that we're in. So recently we've seen developers come, putting in some of the buildings that people say are ugly and all that, but they're there and they're housing, and most of our housing development now is in that commercial area. I know they're not single-family homes on 2-acre lots. They're some would call them high-priced, but they're certainly not luxury apartments or anything else. They're market rate apartments right now. We are working on currently working on a affordable senior housing project that just was approved for an affordable housing TIF at the town council last meeting. And so that's all part of that process, that in order to bring in certain affordable housing, you need to provide a TIF for that and those sort of things. So those are things that I'm involved in that we're trying to do. I just did an analysis on that TIF, on those TIF programs, and starting in 2022, between 2022 and we project through 2028, the work that we've done on the sewer and the work that we have done on zoning for this area up here would add, we're going to add about $150 million in valuation through that work, zoning and the sewer. The sewer is a almost $50 million investment, again, being paid for with some help from the federal government, some help from Congress, some help from other folks. But the majority of that will be paid for through TIF dollars that are coming in through the generation of that. And we're talking about, adding to the housing stock as well, which is pretty good. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at. And I would say one of the things I learned first off is to know who you are really as a community, what you are as a community, not even thinking about what you want, but what you are and how other people see you. Because sometimes one of the hardest things for people to understand is that the outside world doesn't see you like you think you see you sometimes. So when you're talking to developers from outside or you're talking to restaurants or retail, right? I mean, everybody wants an Olive Garden or whatever it was that they want, right? Well, they have looked at you already, more than likely, in one way or another, even ignored you or have looked at you seriously. They know more about you than you know about you right now as a community, and you need to really understand what you are and who you are, and then move from there. And then studies like this, where I think this is where some of the counselors and my board members got a little upset, is because he came in and said, he told us what we were and what we could be if you did some different things. So I think for me, that's a hard part for residents to hear. It's a hard part for town councilors to hear, or select boards to hear, and it's hard sometimes for the comprehensive plan committee to hear. But that's the work you're doing now, is to find out who you are really and where you want to go, and that's what's important. So
Thank you, Tom.
you're welcome.
Does anybody have any questions? Or too many? Go ahead, Chair.
Yeah, Tom, I'm just curious. Two questions real quick. I assume Wyndham has a comprehensive plan. And
It does.
When was it done?
The update was in 2013.
2013. So it's
Yep.
been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah. And do you work closely with when you say we work with planning and zoning and ordinances? Do you use the comprehensive plan as guidance?
Yes. I think the hardest part, and Kayla mentioned that you might want to know about implementation of comprehensive plan. The most difficult part about comprehensive plan is implementing the comprehensive plan, because when you talk about zoning changes or growth areas, and then that's fine to talk about, but when you put a line on a map and you go to change a zone, or change the density in a zone, or change something that's zoned for instance, in the town of Wyndham, farm zone was 60% of the town of Wyndham. Now, we know that farming doesn't occur in all of that 60% of the town, but when zoning first came in, farm was the thing. Well, changing a farm zone to a residential zone on paper is not easy to do. And so that's when the rubber hits the road. That's really when it goes. I'll give you another example. We had trying to implement comprehensive plan growth zone in South Wyndham Village. Okay, so near Gorham, right? South Wyndham, Little Falls. So came in with village zoning, and then so village commercial and then village residential, and the difference was really just density allowed. So commercial was a little more dense, and so it was okay to put in the village commercial area in what really looks like the village down there. But when we tried to extend it past that, there were comments from the people saying, who lived outside of that, no. The village stops at the tracks. So you don't do the village out here, and that's the kind of pushback you get when you're trying to implement things and putting lines on paper. Sure. And that's what's very difficult about it.
And Tom, one other question, which is just, it doesn't necessarily have any bearing on us, but I'm just curious, in your role as far as economic development, working with merchants and individuals that even have larger operations in Wyndham, any talk about their contributing or getting involved with developing housing for the workforce?
Constantly. You know, some of the thing we don't have any real large businesses, literally. I mean, we have some that, you know, it depends, right? It's all relative.
Sure. Home Depot, I'd say, is probably a pretty big business.
It is, but they haven't come to me and said, "Oh, let's put some housing, workforce housing out here." I had a conversation with the president of my board, the president of the Maine Manufacturers Association, and Robin Mullins at the Sebago Lakes region. And by the end of the conversation, I said, and he had come from out of state, and you know, he was relatively new, and he's working on it. I said, "Had you, in your lifetime, of manufacturing, did you think you would be talking about childcare and housing as much as you are now?" And that was a year or so ago. And that's exactly what we're talking about. We're all talking about it. We're talking, if we are talking about larger developments coming in that are not necessarily housing, right? Some of them are talking about just that. How do we bring in workforce housing, dormitories and other things, if you're talking about that. And that's interesting because there are areas where we have zoned for commercial activity or light industry or things like that. They're not zoned for housing. So we're going to have to look at that and see how we can do that and make changes. So yes, housing it's right there. It's always there.
And just curious, as far as some of that funding you must get through impact fees in development?
Yes. We have a number of impact fees, everything from recreation to town hall impact fees. I mean, every time they propose a new one, I get upset about it because, you know, that's more cost to developers to doing things, but it's a way of getting things paid for, you know. So those are, you know, you have to weigh against that too. So yes, there are impact fees. Taxes don't go away, permitting fees don't go away, all those things. It's just, you know.
Thanks, Tom.
John,
How far along is that fiber project? Is it complete? And where is it?
We don't have a fiber project.
Oh, you don't have it.
That was done probably 5 or 6 years ago. We did a study, and we incorporated it. I believe that the group that you're working with, and GPCOG and all that have incorporated that some of the findings we had done back then.
Interesting.
So, you know, it's basically stopped, and it stopped. I'll be completely honest. It stopped at my town council. We brought it to my town council, and they were not receptive to it at all.
Well,
Other councils were more receptive to it.
Was Raymond involved in the discussions? I thought there was a work
Yes.
group at one point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very much part of it.
And then one other thing, who did you use for the consulting on your plan that you have?
Crane Associates, Michael Crane. They're out of Vermont.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
John, you had a question?
Thanks for coming out, Tom.
Okay, John.
Quick question on the planning department in Wyndham. And how many folks over the years has it been? Is it just one planner? Is there or two?
There are two. There's the director who currently does a lot of the bigger picture planning, and there's a planner. So you have the director and the planner works with development coming in and planning board and that sort of thing, getting that worked through, although they both do a lot of that. So that's where we are. Our director is leaving. In fact, next week will be our last week. So we'll be looking for a new one. We don't know how things are going to work out there. And, you know, that's what goes on, and they have an assistant. That's all they got.
Quick follow-up, and in the implementation of the plan, of the comp plan from 2013, I'm assuming the planning department was fairly engaged or involved, at least in part, with that process.
They were the drivers.
Yeah, they were the drivers of it. Good.
Yeah. They were the drivers of it, because they said, okay, we got this plan, this is how we get it done. And so they would bring, proposals to the council, or in our case, we have a long-range planning committee, which in itself can be long-range, but, it's those sort of things that you just got to work through. You do need a driver, though. You need somebody who's going to champion it and drive it. And, if that's the planner, or it's, whoever's in place, the town manager, however it works. But, yeah, you do need a driver.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
Danelle, did you have a quick question?
Yes. Let's see. You'd mentioned impact fees, which is something we've talked a lot about in here. With regard to how that has played out practically, who's covering the cost of that? Is it the developers, or is that passing through to the folks on the other end of it?
Well, I would imagine it passes through at some point. The impact fees, their impact, if you would, on a development depends on what the development is, how that's going to happen, right? Or what's the end result of the development. So we have some folks who are coming in developing rental units, and either that's commercial or residential rentals. They pass it on, but if the added costs, they can't pencil out that project, then it doesn't happen. So, whatever that cost is, whether it's impact fees or the cost of concrete, doesn't really matter. Whatever the costs are into that project, if they can't then rent out that project at a market rate that people will pay, whether that's businesses coming in or it's people living there, then that project doesn't work. If it's against a housing, let's say a strictly for sale housing project, or for a sale, anything else, if they can pass it on in the price, then again, it's a successful project. But if you price the development out of the market, then it doesn't get done again. So those are the things that you got to watch. But that's why I, shudder every time they talk about an impact fee. But it hasn't stopped things yet, and so I've been proven wrong. But it also, that's just another cost to the developer that they have to figure into their project.
Thank you. And just a couple more. When you said earlier that when developments come in and people, general public and developers have some issues and they need to smooth them out, are you including the general public in those conversations, or is it specifically and more so between the developers and the planning board, or developers and what's the extent of that management and communication?
Okay, that would depend.
Okay.
On the project itself,
Mm-hmm.
and at what stage they're in. First off, I want to see every development, even if they don't have to go to planning, I'd like, through the planning process, to come in and talk to the planning department. Then everybody is on the same page as to what's happening, and they know what they'll have to do, through the planning process. Code enforcement, that's the same thing, right? So a lot of times we'll get code enforcement and planning together in the same room with the developer, and they can understand what they need and don't need through the process of development. The communication between a developer and the neighbors, if that's what you're talking about, the general
Just
public,
wondering what that's part
really,
of the question.
we can facilitate that, but we don't hold meetings on behalf of the developer, or we could facilitate coming up with a a meeting time or a place, and the developer can hold those meetings if they really need to. And, sometimes they need to, and a lot of that interaction actually happens at the planning board when they come in for the sketch plan, or they come in, for that first meeting, and people get wind of it. Because a lot of things they're not real until they actually get somewhere for a town. Until they become public, they're not really public. So once they apply to the planning board for something, or the planning department, then it becomes public, and you can really start talking about it. That's where the corporation sometimes can come in, where a member of my board or something can talk with developers privately, and before it becomes a public process.
Thank you.
Yep.
Got one more follow-up.
Sure.
The apartment buildings that you're talking about, are they, I think, if I was trying to Portland, they'd be on the right-hand side on 302. Is that the apartment buildings that you were talking about that went up? You had mentioned they weren't luxury condos.
Oh, yeah, well, we have the blue ones. We call them the blue ones, right? The Fieldings development on the right side going down.
Yep.
That's new. That was actually developed as a condo complex, and they are renting them out now. And they're continuing to work on that. And so that's one thing. On the other out 115 on the left, before you get to the veterinary center on the left,
Yep.
there's the Badger Run development. That's 30 some odd units. Those are new too. And we have others that are in the planning stages coming as well.
Gotcha. So with those two, there's no commercial units on the ground floor, right? Those are all just condos. So
No.
what was?
We changed our zoning back after 2013. We changed our zoning to allow first floor residential. And
That's mixed use?
not mixed use. First floor residential. You can you can do mixed use if you'd like. That's fine. You can do, but it allows first floor residential. Therefore, you can get an apartment building in there, and not like retail over and under apartments. One of the issues we have is that we've been told by brokers and others that we really don't need more retail space. So it's hard to force people to build retail, or even local office space underneath apartments if there's no need for the retail space. So we got to keep working on that. We need to redevelop some of our retail, and we need to do some of that, and that's certainly part of redeveloping the town. But that's what we did, and that immediately allowed for apartment development in this area here. So that's how it happened.
Interesting.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. In some areas it works, and certainly a lot more urban area where you have a lot of street pedestrian access and things like that. It works. Along Route 302, it's kind of, we're not there yet for sure. We want to get there somehow, but we're not there yet.
Do you have a quick one? Okay.
Regarding the sewer system, obviously there's a large cost.
Yes.
How did you and kind of the town come to grips with what the offsetting future revenues would be? And how was that taken into account?
Well, we're still trying to come to grips with the offsetting revenue. But in this case, if you build it, they will come. And that is what we've seen. I mean, I wouldn't take that bet, with town money. When we started out, we thought we could build a sewer system with the TIF funding over the, through the process at the budgeted number we had. Well, we went through a whole bunch of construction inflation. We went through upsizing the treatment plant. We went through all kinds of things. And next thing you know, it's a lot more than what we had budgeted. But the development itself and the new development coming is going to offset that cost through the TIF program. So, yes, I mean, I look every day at what the 10-year note rate is, the federal 10-year note rate is, because somehow that's the borrowing, not exactly, but the borrowing at the state revolving loan fund program where we borrow the money to do this work is based on that. And I don't want it to get too high because they may change their mind, and all my numbers are going to change about how much it's going to cost to get this done. So, you know, we received, let's say, about $6 million in grants, and using some ARPA funds that we have and had and all that, out of a almost $50 million project. So little around 10% or a little more than 10%, right? Maybe 15% of grants, but the rest of it is borrowed money through the state revolving loan fund.
But there is presumably a higher valuation that would come out of it because you can have increased density, which would increase your tax base, and
It may make things more valuable. It will for land parcels, for the land up at, you know, empty parcels, for instance, that it runs by or runs to. It will allow for people in the our landlords who own those retail areas where it's a math game where, you know, what's your septic system hold? Can you actually bring in a hair salon because they have 4 sinks instead of the 1 sink and bathroom that's in there for a retail shop? And the answer usually is no. So now with a sewer connection, yes, you can do that. So you will allow you more opportunities as a landlord to be able to rent your property. So, you know, whether you can get more rent or not, that's between you and your tenants. But those are the things that are going. And right now, we're hoping part of that project will be connecting all the existing businesses for, you know, at no cost to them. They will pay sewer fees afterwards, which they're not happy about either. But, you know, so anyway, but yes, we're hoping that the value of the property, not necessarily the valuation, but the value of the property will become more for the landlords and for the tenants. So.
Tom, who is it that seeks out kind of the grant funds and orchestrates the TIF funds?
Yeah, that's an all hands on deck.
Okay.
Everybody does it. And if you see an opportunity, you send it around, and then department heads, you know, they'll say, yeah, that sounds good. And if you want one that's sending it around, more than likely the one that's helping write it. For instance, there's an outdoor recreation grant that's out there that, you know, we need to put in a couple of weeks. I saw it and I said, hey, is anybody doing this? And nobody said yes, so now I'm working on that with the recreation department and seeing what we might be able to get. We may not be able to get anything, but it's really an all hands on deck. The RAISE grant, the transportation grant, which is a total of $30 million, $25 million from the federal government, 2.5 or whatever it is from the state, and 2.5 from the town. That was written by everybody from planning and public works and town manager's office. I was involved. All kinds of folks were involved in getting that together, plus the state's consultant who wrote the grant. So, you know what I mean? It's really is all hands on deck. Anybody who can help with it. Biggest part of that is getting the information that they need and want. Knowing about your town, knowing how many miles of trails you have, knowing how many acres of land you own, all those things, just for the recreation one, and then everything else, you know, it's just knowing your town.
I would think that what guides or helps that a lot is if you have a current comprehensive plan.
It does. In fact, the town council at the last meeting said, we need to look at our comprehensive plan because we were talking about those growth zones and changing lines on zoning to match the growth zones, and then they heard from a few residents, which is fine. That's what it is. But the residents don't really know what the impact of that blob on a map looks like until it comes down to which property is in that zone, which isn't. And so that then the council says, oh, we got to look at it's been, 7 years or whatever it's been, so we got to, whatever the number's been, and we got to look at that, and we got to look at the plan. And so, you got to watch the overreaction to changing the plan, but you do need a plan to start from. It helps protect your ordinances. It helps protect the decisions that your staff make and your council makes and your planning board makes in regards to zoning changes and that sort of thing, and allowances in projects. So, yep.
Thanks, Tom.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Tom, very much
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Sorry, ran much longer.
That's okay.
Okay.
Jackie, thank you very much for this suggestion. Everybody, this was actually Jackie's idea, so really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
And I did forget, as Peter and I had agreed earlier, that I was going to say that because of the storm, we were going to try to speed things along. So far, we have not done a great job in that. So, that being said, we're going to maybe try to work on that. So next up, we're going to go back to public comment. And I am not seeing any here. And am I seeing everybody on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comment and move on to future land use workshop. And Sam and Kate, there you are. Good evening.
Hi. Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks for accommodating us to be remote. We were both a little worried about how the weather's going to turn out. So we had our future land use workshop a couple weeks ago. We currently have the survey open online, and we're planning to keep that open for about another week. We've gotten, I think, 80 responses so far. So we don't have like a full report to present to you tonight. Instead, we sort of wanted to maybe start by getting your feedback. I don't know if if people want to just start talking or if we go around the room, but we wanted to sort of hear from you since we had a great turnout that night. What you all heard from the people there and some of the things and concerns that you heard. And we can share sort of the initial results from the map activities we had at the workshop. And then in a couple weeks, I guess for the next meeting, we'll hopefully have a full report. But yeah, I don't know do you want me to start it off with the maps, or do you all want to start off by talking about your experience first?
So Kate, I'm fine with us talking about it a little bit first, but I just want to say I'm a little disappointed Sam is not going to narrate a lovely story recapping it, because that was really lovely last time, and I kind of have to say I was looking forward to it tonight, but we will move on. So unfortunately, I was there for the very beginning and then the very end, but I was thoroughly...
You brought the food.
I did bring food, yes. But I was very impressed by how many people came and turned out. So I thought that was lovely, and I will now open it up to see if anybody would like to make a comment regarding the workshop.
Full house, great success to get that much input, probably inspired somewhat by the planning activities of that same week. But maybe that's how we ought to schedule future CompPlans meetings ahead of lively planning board decisions. So, but it was.
Excellent. Anybody else?
There were two people that mentioned something to me. One person was concerned about the proposed ordinance or land use change on Route 302, that they were going to change the White Pines motel into housing. His concern was that Section 8 people would be the type of people that would be in that building if they did that. The second person was concerned about development along the lake because she believed that there were issues with septic systems, that the land couldn't handle more septic systems, and without degrading the lake. Those are two comments that I got.
I was a little, I guess, surprised by how strongly it seemed like the majority of the group felt about 302 in general as being kind of our growth area. And I think, you know, it may be important to recognize just because an area is a growth area doesn't necessarily mean more development. It could mean more investment in improvements on the roadway or traffic or things of that nature. So in my head, there was a little bit of maybe a disconnect there with the understanding of what a growth area means and what that looks like in reality. So certainly I think that corridor is where people feel like it needs the most improvement. But I think that also means that it is a growth area at the same time. So it's, yeah, that was just kind of my takeaway.
Yeah, Jack, you bring up a good point, because that's something we have talked about a lot, is that just because we're saying growth doesn't necessarily mean we're making it bigger.
Right.
That we might just be making improvements, or that's where we want to spend our money.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Peter?
Yeah, just along that line, just to be clear for everyone, for the purposes of the comprehensive plan, the state requires that we identify growth areas. So that's not something that we can say as a community, well, no, we really don't want to designate growth areas. And in fact, the 2004 plan designated that the areas that we were talking about on Long 302 as growth areas. So currently, that's what we have.
I thought it was great. It was so fun to see such a big turnout. I see a lot of the same faces tonight, and it was nice to have community feedback specifically and talk about all the things that we've been talking about for over a year with the people who it impacts on a day-to-day basis. Heard a lot of things that we hadn't thought of before. Heard as far as drainage and where growth should happen, or where neighborhoods need to happen, or what type of transportation we want to see. And it was good to know that there are certain pieces of it that we are holding on fast to as what we want to be for a community, and understanding how we can manage anything that's coming down the road with the implementation of the plan. So I appreciate the involvement. I appreciate everybody who's here tonight and online, and just encourage you to keep your comments coming, because that helps us understand what's important for us as we're moving forward.
I agree. All right, Kate. I think we've made our comments. Your turn.
All right, let me share my screen. Oh, Sue, can you let me share my screen?
Oh, yeah. Tell them to share screen. If you hover over it, there's see the arrow up next to it? Where? Next to, good, you have down on where it says, maybe if I just take the mouse. This little arrow, that gives you here, and then you have advanced sharing things, and then who can share, all participants, and yeah, we'll do both. You should be all set now, Kate.
Thank you. Yep, that worked.
Perfect. So that's what it is to screen share. I didn't
All
think about
right.
that. I'm
So let's see, I'll make this a little bigger. So really what we've done so far is we took all the dots on the maps and all the Post-it notes and recorded everything and tallied up basically positive and negative reactions and some of the sort of themes and suggestions we got. the survey is asking about some of the same ideas, but in a different way. So we're going to wait until we close the survey, and then we'll put all this information together. The overall results of the maps, the villages map got the most, that scenario got the most positive feedback, followed by the conservation scenario, and the corridors one came last. All of the 302 growth areas got a lot of negative feedback. And I think we did hear a lot, as you all kind of already said, from people about the issues that people are experiencing with 302 and their concerns. So I think that this is definitely something where the committee, will want to, in this future land use plan, think about how we can use investment in this area to make it better. Not necessarily saying there will be, like Jackie was explaining, growth area doesn't always mean development, it means investment. So, how can we direct investment to make that a better, more livable, more usable place? Within the villages scenario, the Webb's Mills village, kind of around where you are right now, got the most positive responses. In the conservation scenario, people had the most positive things to say about the large block of land in North Raymond being critical rural for protection. And within the corridors, the Webb's Mills corridor also got the most positive responses. So I think that also maybe will give us some ideas as a committee to think about people having an interest in having, maybe another smaller neighborhood kind of hub of activity or community space, maybe in the Webb's Mills area, somewhere off of 302. So that will be something to think about. In terms of other themes, the biggest concern people had that was mentioned the most time was water protection, specifically around Sebago Lake, which kind of corresponds to the emphasis on lakes that we've heard throughout this process. A lot of people were interested in having more land be permanently conserved in Raymond. We heard about traffic, especially on 302. And we did hear some voices who were concerned about basically all new growth, who wanted to really limit growth in Raymond. And then the last thing I compiled here was a list of some really specific suggestions that we were given during the workshop. So people gave some very specific areas where they want to see a crosswalk or traffic lights or reduced speed limits. So we'll just kind of keep a running list of this from the survey as well, because those really pinpointed suggestions can be helpful when we start thinking about goals and more specific implementation things. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions, but this is kind of just the initial what we heard from the maps and the Post-its.
Do we have any specific comments?
How much longer do we stay open?
I was going to leave it open through the end of next week. We'll send out some more reminder emails to see if we can get a few more people to answer.
Anybody else? It's quiet here, Kate.
Okay.
Quiet before the storm.
Good. Well, I think, that was, if anyone has any other comments on the future land use, otherwise I think, thank you all for your help. Thank you everyone who came out and who's still attending these meetings. This is great to see more faces. And we will have a full report together by around the time of the next meeting.
Excellent. All right. Are we ready to move on to vision statement? Think so. All right, moving along. I think we would like to try to, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, we'd like to kind of finalize this or try to.
I would believe this is a couple of months in arrears. I know that we can tweak it right up till when we
Yeah, yeah.
present the plan. But I believe trying to be fairly faithful to the timeline, it's to be approved. But we'd want to talk first about these comments to see if any of the comments specifically on the vision would suggest that we missed anything or should change something. That'd be my recommendation.
And I'm assuming everyone had a chance to look over the comments. So I'd like to hear if we would like to add anything or change anything to the vision statement. Go ahead, Peter.
Sure. So I have prepared a short synopsis of my opinions, and short is short. Just looking at overall the comments, I think there were a little over a dozen. In my opinion, one of them was pro-growth, 4 of them were anti-growth, and 3 can already contain or are addressed in the current vision. So I would say the only 2 I saw that we might consider changing would be the second comment, which is add Notched Pond to the list of water bodies. And I think that's valid as far as we're naming every other water body, with the exception of Nubble. So I would say we would either just make a general statement, we want to protect all of our lakes and waterways, or we should name all of them. So that'd be my first suggestion. And that would include Nubble, although we didn't hear from anybody there, but that was just my thought. And the only other thing I would say is that there was a question, 4th from the bottom, what is Climate Resilience Initiative? And I think that's a valid question. It's a broad question, broad statement, and it should be contained, I believe, in our vision. However, might we include, let's say, in the natural resources or housing chapters, a kind of a little more definition of what we're talking about when we talk about resiliency? So is it building houses that are more resilient? Is it going to be getting into looking at other factors involving the environment that would allow for more resiliency? So those are my 2 thoughts.
Does anybody else have any thoughts?
I think we've worked hard to keep this a certain size. I don't want to make it bigger. I think the step to do is to take these and ensure that if we're not specifically including them in the draft vision statement, we're addressing each of them in the underlying sections that apply and support the vision statement.
I thought about that with with the first comment, because I'm pretty sure we addressed that in our in our first chapter in the history.
We addressed it there.
Yeah, so I kind of was like, okay, we don't address it here.
That was one of the ones I said it's already contained. It's just not in the vision statement.
And jumping off of what Peter was saying about climate resilience, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, does anybody have any strong feelings against naming every body of water, or would we prefer just to say all of the body of waters? I mean, I don't really have a strong preference either way.
I don't either. I just think it should be all or none.
I like all of them.
All of them, yeah. I think that's...
It does sort of highlight how unique we are, because there aren't that many communities that do have so many
7
bodies of
ponds or
water.
whatever.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not that common.
Yeah, let's name them.
Yeah, and they're such a huge part of our identity. We don't want to just glaze over the fact that there are bodies of water in Raymond.
Okay. So we would be adding them in there. So Notched and Nubble Pond.
So what you doing, just ponds and lakes and not rivers and streams?
I think we'd have too many rivers and streams.
Yeah.
And
If that's a very good point, Greg. But I
Well, it might be an argument for just naming all water bodies as opposed to every lake and pond.
I do think in the original, we didn't include any of the names for that exact reason.
Full circle.
full circle.
You could say, and their tributaries, which would capture the
And their tributaries?
Watersheds and their tributaries.
I like and their tributaries personally.
That keeps it to the water.
It keeps it just to all the water.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't know. I mean, I enjoy the tributaries almost just as much. There is nothing better than kayaking through. I can't think of it right
Mighty Tenny
now.
River, yeah.
Tenny River. Yes, that's got to be one of the most beautiful places I've ever come across. So, I mean, I would like to say that too. So yeah, I like adding the 2 additional ponds and saying and all
All
tributaries.
their tributaries, yeah.
Because how do we feel about that? Does that extend the length too much? Okay.
So I would make a motion that we accept the draft vision statement as written as our vision statement, with the addition of Nubble Pond and Notched Pond and all of the lake's tributaries. And certainly, you know, we could ask if North Star would be willing maybe to wordsmith that a little bit, because I'm not the greatest wordsmith.
Second.
So we have a
Second?
motion.
Okay, all right. So we are voting to accept the draft statement
With those
as Peter has said.
amended.
And we have a second, so we can vote.
Yeah.
All right. All in favor? And that passes. All right. Excellent. Maybe we will make up some time. So next is introduction to goals, policies, and strategies. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Kate. Or Sam.
Yeah, thank you. So we have basically reached the part in this process where we start talking about how to make the vision that you've been building, how to make that happen. So this is the part of this is that this is a required section of the plan to have goals, policies, and strategies. But this is also where the committee really has a lot of room to customize what you're putting into this plan. So I'm going to share my screen again and go through a presentation. Basically, looking out over the next few meetings, we're going to be working on goals, policies, and strategies and the future land use plan probably for a few months. As we sort of start to finalize what we want these things to look like. So this is going to take a little while to really put together, but I'm going to give an introduction to what you're going to be doing tonight. And I'm going to give you homework. And we'll start working more on this part of the plan at the next meeting. So let's see. I think everyone can see that. Yeah, so goals, policies, and strategies, there is a state required plan element to this, which is that the state of Maine has a list of policies and strategies arranged by inventory topic area, so by all those, economy, history, all those topics that must be included in the plan. They give you this as a spreadsheet, and you just have to kind of put that in your plan in some form or another. The other side of this is the local goals, policies, and strategies, and this is 100% you. This is where you start to connect the vision, the values, everything you've heard, future land use, and come up with big picture goals, some more nuanced policies, and then some action items to make this plan implementable. So people can sometimes use different terminology for these sort of types of categories, but goals are really the big picture, high level part of this. Policies, you can also sometimes call these objectives, are becoming more specific, and then strategies or action items are the very specific things that support the goals. So you'll probably have a few big goals, each supported by a bunch of policies, and each of those policies will be supported by a bunch of strategies. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And feel free to interrupt me if you have questions, because I can't really see everyone. Yeah, so what's a goal? A goal is high-level, aspirational, desired outcomes. A really good place to start thinking about goals is to look at that vision statement that we were just approving. So this is a what do you want statement. And there are no state-required goals. All the goals come from the community. So I put a couple here from other communities that I thought kind of illustrate what we're talking about. So create a North Windham to be proud of, support downtown Bath as a destination, create, expand, and protect housing options throughout Yarmouth, protect the natural environment in our growing community. These are all very high level. These don't tell you what to do. They just represent this kind of aspiration for the town. Then when we look at policies, these are sort of general statements in support of a goal. So these are what are we going to do kind of statements. And like I said, there will be state required policies, but you can also have local policies that you come up with yourself. And this is also an area where you can start to bring in some regional coordination, where you might be thinking about a policy where the town wouldn't just be doing something alone. So these are some policies from other towns. So increase the amount of protected resources and open space in Yarmouth, support Yarmouth's small business community. And then this is a state policy, just to give you an example. The state requires that you have a policy to maintain and upgrade existing recreational facilities as necessary to meet current and future needs. So you can maybe start to see that these are more specific than the goals, but they're still not telling you actual action items yet. So where we get into those action items is the strategies. So these are the specific tasks for you to implement the policies and the goals in the plan. So this is how are we going to do it? And like with policies, there's state requirements, but you can also come up with your own. There are also probably be some of these where you're going to talk about working with other communities or the county or the state. And these, when we come up with the actual planning document, these strategies ideally will be assigned to someone, whether it's a town staff, a town committee, and we'll have some kind of prioritization, whether it's short, medium, and long term, or in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. So these are really the action items. These are where you want to be really specific and kind of start to put in some accountability for who's going to do this, when are they going to do it, kind of thing. So you can see I put a state strategy at the top here. I'm not going to read the whole thing. That's really long. Pursue public-private partnerships to protect critical and important natural resources. So that one has to be in there. There are a lot like that. But then here are some other ones from communities. So explore additional regulations to allow tiny homes and other innovative housing types. So that's a very specific action item that, like, say, a town code enforcement officer or someone could do. They could look at what zoning would need to change to allow tiny homes. And then here's one, which is continue to work with Greater Portland Metro to improve transit options. So this is, again, something that is pretty specific and is working with a regional partner. And then to kind of try and put this all together, here's an example of a goal, a policy that supports it, and a strategy that supports it. So the big goal is protect the natural environment in our growing community. One of the policies is increase the amount of protected resources and open space. And then one of the strategies is to identify and adopt an open space acquisition goal. So I hope this is sort of starting to take shape for people, like the kind of levels we're talking about here. The goals are very, very big picture. The policies are a little more specific, and then the strategies are the actual things you have to do to make it happen. So we can talk more about this, but basically we're going to assign you some homework tonight to start thinking about this. And we want to ask you to come up with your own list of a few high-level goals and some policies for the next meeting, and send them to me before the meeting so we can put them all together and start to look at it and start to talk about it. And you get the goals really come from the vision statement, things we identified in the inventory chapters, ideas from public participation, from future land use, and also from your experience. That's why you're on this committee, because you know the community better than we do. So I can bring any of those slides back up, but I can't see anybody when I do that. So I will put it away, and maybe we can answer some questions or talk about any of this more specifically.
Frank.
Can you email us our assignment?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Could you email us the assignment?
Yep, I will.
Thanks.
So do you all feel like you're at a point where you can start thinking about this and coming up with some of these, or does this feel like crazy?
I mean, personally, I think I can look at the vision statement and pull 3 or 4 sentences out of it and then say 10 policies. I mean, that's how I'm probably going to approach it. Peter, you had something to say?
Yeah, Kate, just a question. When you mentioned before about the state especially kind of required things or whatever, would we get some of the guidance as I look at the self-assessment checklist? And it lists basically analysis, condition, trends, policy, and strategies, and basically gives a nice little synopsis of each of those for each of the chapters. So is that part of kind of the guidelines, at least from what the state's looking for, that we could use?
Yeah, so that, I think the policies and strategies are in that state checklist, but I can also share with you, here, I'll just share my screen one more time so you can see what this looks like. So this is the spreadsheet of the state goal policies and strategies sorted by inventory chapter. So water resources, you can see that a lot of these are pretty wordy, but this is the whole document of what the state will require you to have in the plan. And we can send this around as well when we send you your homework, but it's important to remember that since these are state required, not all of these are gonna fit Raymond perfectly. There might be some where you're like, oh, we already do that, or some where you're like, that is totally not a problem here. And that's okay. They just have to be in here because they're part of the state statute. And when we get into things like responsible party and timeline, that's where we can put in timeline like as needed, or, continue to monitor this or something like that to make it make sense for Raymond as much as we can. But yeah, we can send this along. It's pretty long, and there are ones in every category except for population. There's no state requirements for population. But yeah. A lot of these relate to state statute and are rather wordy.
So, Kate, on the state requirements, we're not looking to duplicate the state requirements. We're looking to come up with our own, and then you're going to ensure that the state requirements are already in there. So we can just avoid those generally.
Yeah, you don't have to look through those. We
Okay.
can share them in case you're interested in what you have to put in there, but in general, I wouldn't worry about those right now. I would go for what, building from the vision and what you've heard and your experience, what you want to have in there.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions regarding our homework? Kate, you said before the next meeting, but would you like a specific, how much time before the meeting so that you have time to compile it?
I was just thinking a few days. I'll look at the calendar when I send this all out, but we were just going to ask for you to send it maybe the Monday before so we can put it all into one document. So maybe at the next meeting we can have a little bit of a working session where we look at all these ideas and start to think about it more. And we're really asking you to start at the higher level ones, like the big picture goals. And then later on in the process, we'll think more about those kind of action item level things. Of course, if you're the kind of person where you would rather think of action items right now, that's okay too. It'll all be part of the same thing, so.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions regarding that? Okay. Kate, did you have anything further that you wanted to talk to us about with the goals, policies, and strategies?
I don't think so. I think if you all feel comfortable that that's an assignment you're ready to take on, we'll send that out, and it'll be exciting to start working on this in the next meeting.
All right. Excellent. Thank you, Kate. I'd like to remind everyone the next meeting date is May 1st. The June meeting, we will have another guest speaker, Robin Mullins, will come in. So we can look forward to that. I'm now going to open it up to committee comment, if anybody has any comments. Peter.
Yeah, I'd say just a couple of comments. The first one being that I hope that certainly we get it sounds like we've already got 80 responses from the future land use survey. And I think that's great, and I think that will help inform us. Hopefully, like it was kind of observed, we got a larger representation that we expected, but that was in part because in town there's currently were a couple of issues that are kind of hot buttons that they really haven't been resolved that prompted more people to come out, and I was gratified to see that. At the same, I encourage that people get their voices heard as far as what they believe needs to happen in town, and certainly the place you can start, as far as I'm concerned, is the comprehensive plan. But once again, also, we've got to look at the largest sampling we can get. And if there is a meeting which there is some amount of survey information being acquired, and there is a consolidated group there, I believe that you're going to see more red stickers than green stickers, let's say down on 302 or in the commercial zones. And if that in fact is the desire of the community, that's what's going to be reflected in the comprehensive plan. I'm just a little concerned that we don't get more of a showing of individuals, and I believe that that's something that hopefully over the next 6 months is going to increase, and we'll get more feedback into that. The other thing I just wanted to mention, and I had mentioned it before, I kind of wanted to ask Tom this question. It was in the top of my head, which is, when did you do your comprehensive plan? He's looking at the financial future of Wyndham. He's dealing with everything from housing to zoning, and he described all of that. And he's working on a document that's almost a decade old, or actually over a decade old. We found ourselves handcuffed in the same regard. We did a comprehensive plan in 2004, and we're doing it now, and it'll be done in 25. So that's too long. And what I had mentioned before, as well as the fact that as Tom had mentioned, from everything I've learned, this is the easy part. It's the implementation that's the hard part. And I will tell you that my goal is that we do not have 104 recommendation for changes in the town to be implemented. That's why it took them 6 years to complete implementation, and they got about a third of it implemented. And so I would say more we focus on goals, higher level goals that then come down to what's reflected in the information we've gotten from the community. And what we do is say, we're going to have 10 goals, and this is what they're going to involve, and it's going to involve 20 policies. And I believe we have a much better chance of implementing those than what happened with the last go-around. And I think lastly, what's got to come as part of our plan is a recommendation that there be some sort of designated and official follow-up committee and or implementation individuals that are going to ride herd on the implementation. I think as Kate had mentioned, they're going to be looking for dates as to when do you think or what do we recommend this implementation take place. And that's something I believe this committee is going to be empowered to do as well. So those are my comments.
Any other committee comments? I would like to thank everybody who has attended. We've said this numerous times here that it is not the 9 members of our plan, right? This is not our plan, it's our community's plan. So I think that we all really appreciate seeing so many names on the Zoom and in person, even with an impending storm. So I would like to thank all of you for attending tonight. And please come again. If that is it, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I have,
Oh, sorry, John.
I don't know if the public comment piece, if these folks were here for some comment tonight in hopes of that, or, because
We did have public comment and no one stepped up. I suppose if we feel like we could and we want to, we can reopen public comment. Would we like to reopen public comment?
You need to come.
So you, okay.
Just your name, rank, and serial number.
We've got a hand raised online too.
Hi, I'm Kristen Waters, and I found the comprehensive plan meeting really insightful because I was one of those who was going to the planning board because I lived down in the area off of Clearwater and Gardner. And Jackie, what you said tonight about the clarification between what the growth meant, I think there's a big perception that growth equals expansion. And I think I would love to see some messaging about what growth entails. Just like if you want to like renovate, or is it expansion or is it improvement? And that's really, I think, a huge point of clarification.
Thank you. Is that Chase? I cannot see.
We got a hand raised.
Hi, Chase Curtis, 22 Merrill. I too appreciated the opportunity to be, at least via Zoom, on the front end of the future land use planning meeting. I think there were some interesting data points that, or at least facts that were presented, but I didn't really feel like it was substantive data for me to wrap my head around. For example, 256 permits for residential, 2 for commercial. I really would have liked to understand more deeply, and I apologize I didn't participate in any of the inventory processes that this group went through, but it seems to me that that was presented as a data point supporting incremental growth of residential units. And what I'd like to understand, and whether that's from North Star or from some department within Raymond itself, of those 256 permits, how many were actually new incremental residential units on undeveloped land, as opposed to modifications of, improvement of, tear downs, and replacement of existing structures? In other words, that was presented as a data point in my mind as supporting and the need for more housing. And I believe the number was 200 incremental housing units and over the next 20 years, and 100 housing units for seasonal. There needs to be some data support for the premise of growth. And Chris and I appreciate your comments. And Jackie, what you mentioned, that growth does not necessarily mean expansion of building more buildings, going 3-story multifamily. It might mean just making sure 302 operates better than it does. It might just mean doing a little bit better job with the developments and a low-rise multiplex building along the 302 corridor. So anyway, I would like to see more data on the 256 as to whether those were actually new units or not. Thank you very much for the work that this committee does. It's really important, and I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for your comment. Does anybody else have a comment tonight? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Chase, unfortunately, I don't think that's data that we have here as a committee tonight, but it's something that we can look into. So thank you for that. So I think now,
Second the motion.
so I have a motion in general, and then Greg can second it.
Make that motion.
Make a motion, thank you, Sean, and
Oh, there
second.
already was one.
Not yet. And then Greg, I don't think so. Maybe I missed it.
Oh,
Greg's a
okay.
second. All those in favor of adjourning?
We're adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.
Stay safe.